Boy, I must be a sight right now. I just got back from a walk. Anyways, I had to do a little bit of extra work for this one because I kind of had to know what the severity level of this hospital trip was, because you could go to the hospital for a minor thing, you could go to the hospital because you're dying. So we had to figure out how seriously we're going to take this. So what I did is I used a random number generator and had it pick a number between 1 and 10. 10 being like the least severe scenario possible, and 1 being like the most severe scenario possible, as in somebody's dying. And we got number 6. So it's a little concerning, but they're gonna recover just fine. Now that we've got all that out of the way, who's in the hospital? Oh no! Eddie! His clumsiness must have gotten the better of him this time. Who is Eddie's doctor? I'm sorry, Eddie, you country hick. You can't self-medicate. Let's try this again. Who's Eddie's doctor? Eddie, is it too late to change my mind? Dr. Darling's in the house. Okay, who's a nurse? At least we have a competent nurse. Who is just absolutely freaked out because Eddie's in the hospital? Of course, like, she thinks about worst case scenario about everything. Who thinks Eddie doesn't need to be in the hospital and he can just tough it out? Eddie, no! Who's giving out medical advice even though they're not a doctor? Frank, I know you are the smartest person in the entire neighborhood, but last I checked, you didn't have your freaking medical license. I get it, he's concerned about Eddie, but that's beside the point. Who is just absolutely bombarding Dr. Wally with a million questions? Julie's just concerned about her friend. Alright, who's flirting with the nurse? Who's flirting with Howdy? Dr. Wally, no! Wally x Howdy, shippers, come get your man! Who keeps fidgeting with the controls to the hospital bed? Wally simps, come get your man! Who's just chilling and watching TV? Probably for the best, since she tends to panic about every little thing. And who is that person that takes off their shoes in the hospital room? Barnaby? You don't wear shoes. Is he even allowed in the hospital? I love how chaotic these get, but I just have so many questions. Well, since you suggested it. Alright, there's been a murder. Who's the victim? I'm sorry, for as much trouble as Wally has caused in these videos, I'm not upset. Who found the body? That's sus. I know this fandom, and that is sus. Who's the detective who's going to try to solve Wally's murder? Yep, she's jumping right on it. That's her friend. Who is the prime suspect in Wally's murder? The one who found the body. And the one who apparently has a lot of beef with Wally. Who is Howdy's alibi? Yeah, I would say that's a pretty solid alibi. Alright, we're going to list out 3 more suspects. So who's suspect number 1? I mean, I can see Frank eventually snapping Wally's neck. Who's suspect number 2? Barnaby. I already know now this dude didn't do it. And who is suspect number 3? But she never leaves her nest. Who gets arrested for Wally's murder? Eddie, I have some terrible news. And now the moment of truth. Who actually did it? I knew it! Alright, wait a minute. Show me Frank if Frank was Howdy's accomplice. So you just got an innocent man arrested. I will see you in court. I can only imagine this going wrong in so many ways. Now, I was babysat until up to roughly the age of 11 or 12, so we got a bit of a range of ages to choose from. So we went back to the random number generator, and we got the number 2. So we are dealing with the terrible 2s. And because this is stated very specifically that this is Neighbor's kid we're talking about, I have a very important question. Who the daddy? or mommy, whichever one it is. I was drunk, okay? There is no way that arrangement would have been made sober. Now that I've managed to calm myself down a little bit, who do we originally ask to babysit? You know, I don't know a better beagle for the job. He seems like he'd be a great babysitter. And we'll just say that this was a chain reaction of neighbors volunteering to babysit our kid. Who's the one that triple checks with neighbor to make sure they've got everything that they need and they know everything that they need to know? What did I say? Best beagle for the job. Who packs a first aid kit just in case? I imagine he would. He's just like, we gotta be prepared for anything. Alright, remember, this is a 2-year-old we're talking about who is watching this child like a hawk. Frank Wood, who amuses the kid by singing them songs. That would be her specialty, I'm sure. Who sits down and plays games with the child? Wally, I'm still mad at you. 2 years later. But at least he's a baby daddy that's pulling his weight. Who sits down and reads to the child? Seriously, Barnaby is really on this babysitting stuff. Who's put in charge of snack time? Alright, yeah, you know he's following a very specific schedule and he's making sure Baby Bean is getting all the nutrients. Now, as we all know, 2-year-olds have a tendency to get into stuff. Who starts falling apart because of the stress? She falls apart very early on. Oh, I totally forgot this one. Who's doing arts and crafts? Barnaby. You are just running this babysitting operation. Alright, they've managed to get Baby Bean to lay down for a nap, but who absolutely passes out with him? Yeah, I can see it. Alright, despite all the chaos and all the drama, who really enjoyed doing this for us? Barnaby is the main character of this TikTok. But just the idea that this is Wally's kid we're talking about gives me a headache. The Welcome Home characters. Horror movie edition. That bodes well. Alright, who's the killer everybody's going to be running from? And I'll be damned if it wasn't Wally. Who is a harbinger of doom that tries to warn the others about Wally? I honestly think Eddie would, like the moment something suspicious was going on. Alright, let's rip this band-aid off. Who's the first one to die? No! Betrayal! Who feels like they were warned about something like this in a dream? That's why he's so concerned about warning the others about Wally. Who is the person that hears a suspicious voice and goes to investigate? Sally, I thought you'd be smarter than that. Show me Wally if Wally kills her. Okay, so she survives. The power gets cut off. Who goes into the basement to try to get the lights back on? Seriously, do you have a death wish? Show me Wally if Wally kills her. And Sally is dead. Who is hiding when suddenly their phone rings? Poor Poppy. Show me Wally if Wally finds her. Okay, you lucked out there, Poppy. Who tries to run away from Wally by going upstairs? Eddie, no. Show me Wally if Wally manages to catch him. Okay, so Eddie survives. Who trips over themselves while trying to run? Poor Poppy. Show me Wally if Wally manages to catch Poppy. Poppy is dead. Who tries taking the car that won't start? No, Eddie. Show me Wally if Wally manages to catch Eddie. Okay, Eddie's safe. Alright, this time there's no escape. Who dies in the bathroom? R.I.P. Howdy. Who manages to contact the police? Frank, absolutely coming in clutch there. But the question is, does Frank die immediately after? Unfortunately, he does. Oh no. For those who haven't been able to keep track, it's currently Eddie and Julie versus Wally. Who's the person that confronts Wally? Eddie. He's pissed because he killed Frank. So out of the three of them, who dies first? No, Julie. Okay, Eddie and Wally go head to head. Who wins? Eddie wins! Fuck you, Wally. Also, Eddie is going to need some major therapy. The welcome home characters, if they were on an airplane. Oh, you are diabolical. And for the record, we're not talking about a short baby airplane trip. No, we are crossing oceans and crossing continents. So who starts planning for this trip months in advance? You know Frank would. You know Frank would, and you know Frank would make sure that Eddie was prepared months in advance. Who is the person that puts everything off to the last minute? I wish I could say I was surprised. Who's like me and absolutely loves traveling by plane, or at the very least doesn't mind it? I can see it. Opposite end of the spectrum, who is deathly afraid of flying? Oh, poor Barnaby. Alright, the moment of truth. Who's going to be our pilot for this trip? We're probably going to die. Alright, who's the poor soul that gets seated next to a person with poor personal hygiene? Oh no. Oh, poor Frank, I'm so sorry. Who gets seated next to a mother with a fussy child? I don't think she minds all that much, honestly. Who has come fully prepared with ibuprofen, melatonin, and noise-canceling headphones? Barnaby made sure of that. Who's like me and has to get up every couple of hours to use the restroom? Hey, when nature calls. Who's that person that reclines their seat all the way back? Wally, just know that the person behind you absolutely hates your guts. And finally, who's the jerk that takes off their shoes while they're on the plane? What am I going to say to a 7 to 8 foot caterpillar? I literally had to dig through like 3 of my other TikToks to find this comment. It was so buried. The Welcome Home characters, Road Trip Edition. I'm making this one and I'm going to bed. Who suggests we go on a road trip? Frank, is this going to be like the time you suggested a sleepover? Was this supposed to be specifically just you and Eddie? Who is an OG when it comes to road trips and is always prepared? Honestly, I don't doubt it. On the flip side of that coin, who dreads going on road trips but decides to go anyway? I don't know why, but I wasn't expecting that from Wally. Alright, who's driving? How scared do I need to be? I don't know how to feel about this. Who's riding shotgun? Of course it's Wally. Who's in charge of supplies and doing an inventory check? This man runs his own store. Inventory is his business. And who's in charge of our itinerary? She's got a lot of fun trips planned. Who is the backup driver just in case Barnaby gets tired? I have confidence in this guy as well. You know, we have like the 2 tallest and biggest characters driving. This has got to be a really big vehicle. Who's in charge of the map or GPS? He's gonna take us on a bunch of side trips to apple orchards and stuff. That or get us hopelessly lost. Alright, every road tripper's worst fear. The car breaks down. Who gets out to go fix it? I can just imagine his head is spinning the entire time. Who gets out to help Frank because they're stressed and frustrated? Sally, you're a good friend. Okay, we end up taking a wrong turn at some point, and the map and the GPS are not being helpful. Who stops and asks for directions? Howdy was driving. That's all I got for this one. I'm gonna go lay down and knock out.